Hello and welcome Year 11 to our Year 11 to Year 12 transition for A-level product design. So this video is just going to talk in a little bit of detail about the information that we're going to go over today in our transition session. So if you were there in the session, it's just a repeat, but it's also a good reminder for future as we're going to talk over our transition work and topics. Which brings me to what will we be covering today? In this session, we will briefly look over the specification of the A-level, but this will be gone over in a lot of detail in September, so don't panic if you don't feel like we've gone over it in much detail at all today. We're also going to go over the transition work that's been set for you, and we're going to explain the expectations of that work and show you some WAGOLLs so you have a good idea as to what you should be aspiring to. And we're also going to explain the expectations of Year 12 and what you can expect in the first few terms. Okay, so let's start off with the specification. So, AQA is the exam board that we use for our A-level product design. Here on the slide you can see that there is a link to more information about the A-level in a bit more detail, so do feel free to visit that at any point during your summer break. And during the course, you're going to cover two things. We're going to look at technical principles. So this is different materials and their properties and applications, so what they're used for. We're going to look at production methods, rules and regulations within design to make sure we're being ethical and moral, and also how to enhance a material, and we're going to look at some new technologies. The second area of the course is designing and making principles. So this is where we're going to look at design theory, responsible design, so how can we make sure that what we do isn't having a huge negative impact on our environment. So there's a huge link to sustainability there, which you would have covered in GCSE if that's where you've come from. We're also going to be looking at different manufacturing skills to make sure that the ones we use are the most suitable and appropriate, and we're going to be looking at designing skills. So this course, this A-level, is going to be assessed in two ways. It will be a non-exam assessment piece of work, so your NEA, which is worth 50% of your A-level. The second assessment is through two different exams. So there'll be an exam on your technical principles, and there'll be an exam on designing and making principles. But we will cover this theory before these exams are taken. Okay, so this is going to be the main part of our session today, and it's going to be talking about our transition work that we've set for you to complete over the summer for your first day in September. This is going to take quite a big chunk out of our session today, just because I wanted to make sure that you had a very clear understanding of the tasks and you had an understanding as to what we're expecting from you. So very quickly, I just want to go through the purpose of these tasks, so why they've been set. So let's start with the Gateway Progression booklet. Now this should take you up to 10 hours to complete. We are not expecting you to sit for 10 straight hours to complete this work. Pick it up once a day, read through the task, maybe aim to get one task every couple days finished, perhaps, because there are quite a few in there. If you aim to do just one a week, you won't get all this work completed. So it's just finding that balance of making sure you've got it all done by the time you start on day one, but not feeling overwhelmed. That's not the purpose of this work, okay? But speaking of purpose, the purpose of this booklet is to give you an idea as to the theory work that we will be covering throughout Year 12 and Year 13. Our next task is Design Influences task. Now this will take you up to 5 hours, and the purpose here is to teach you what makes a good design, as well as what influences existing designers and also past designers, and what movements and art movements are available for you to look at for future inspiration. The next task is the Fence Design Challenge. Again, this can take you up to 10 hours. The purpose of this task is to give you the opportunity to fix an existing real-life problem, and this is what you'll be doing in Year 13. This is also a fantastic opportunity to investigate and explore who you are as a designer. There is a waggle that goes with this task, but it is your own challenge. You can attack it in any way that you see fit. And again, we will talk about this in a lot more depth, but it is a fantastic opportunity to see who you really are as an independent designer. And then finally, we've got some optional CAD work. So this isn't a mandatory piece of work, it is optional. And the purpose of it is to build your CAD knowledge and skills, which you will use throughout year 12 and year 13. So building on these skills now is a fantastic advantage for you. However, not all of you have access to a laptop or a computer for a good amount of time in order to explore this software, so please don't panic. You won't be at a huge disadvantage if you don't know how to use this software. We will be going over it in school, but it is just really helpful if you are aware as how it works. So please don't worry if you can't access it. Okay, so like I said, here would be the point if you have any questions. If you do have any questions and you're watching this on the YouTube link, do feel free to email myself, Ms. Anson, or Mr. Thompson before the end of term, and we will do our absolute best to make sure that we answer them and get back to you before September. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the transition work, and the first thing we're going through is the booklet, which will take up to 10 hours, and I'm going to break down each task. So this is to do with technical principles, which is part of your theory work for your AQA A-level product design. Here we're looking at materials. All we're asking you to do here is to research the following materials and create a mind map based on your research and understanding of their characteristics and working properties. So there's quite a few materials here. We've got woods, metals, polymers, textiles, composites, and smart and modern materials. So for each one of those, you can create just one big mind map for each one. So maybe just on a piece of A4, you'd have one for woods, one for metals, one for polymers. If you've got a huge A3 sheet of paper at home, you could even try and do a whole mind map on all the materials in one place. The choice is entirely up to you. However, on the next slide, I am just going to show you a quick waggle, which is here. So this is a waggle I've created for you, and it is on metal-based materials. And I'm just going to very quickly explain to you what I did and why. So you do cover metal materials in your GCSE. So when I started this mind map, the first thing I did was I wrote down all the things I could just remember off the top of my head. So I started with the different types of metal materials. You've got ferrous, non-ferrous, and alloys. I then started to think about the different characteristics of all the metals that I already know exist. And I created a small branch of the characteristics of the different material properties that metals often display. And then I just started to list the different metals that go into those categories. So this is how I started my own mind map. But then what I did, once I could think of absolutely everything and I got it down on the paper, I then went away and I started doing some research, and everything that I learned, so all the new material that I hadn't remembered and I hadn't written down, I had added on in purple. Now this is one of my favorite revision techniques because it shows you what you didn't remember, and it shows you what maybe you need to practice a little bit more in regards to revision to make sure that you can retrieve it quite quickly, ready for an exam or your NEA, or well, any time really. So this is how I did my mind map. You might choose to do yours using CAD software. There's plenty of mind map softwares available to you for free. Just pop them into Google and they'll pop up. But also pen and paper is more than acceptable. Okay, next task from the booklet. This is where we're going to look at production processes. So your task is to research the following manufacturing processes and create a presentation explaining the process. Include diagrams, sketches to aid your understanding. And below we have a list of all of these processes. Some of them are to do with plastics, metals, and wood materials. So let's look at that first and break that down. So here you go. I've labelled them to show you which are the polymer processes, timber processes, and metal processes, because some of them do overlap. So for example, laminating is a very common, paper slash polymer process where you take a piece of paper and then you put a plastic lamination pocket over it, you put it through a heater and it will heat the polymer and bond it to the paper, blah blah blah. We know what laminating is. But for this, we're more interested in timber lamination and the polymer process of lamination, which doesn't involve paper and plastic pockets, which is why I labelled that for you, so you had a good idea as to where you're going. So let me show you a waggle as to what this work could look like. And here we go. So this is a one-page presentation. It can be a PowerPoint with 2 or 3 slides. The choice is yours. I chose to work with just one page so that I can also use it as a very quick and easy revision resource. So the one thing I didn't do, however, is I didn't add a title, which I will have to go back and add. But for this waggle, I chose to look at the metal process of milling. And so the first thing I started with, I got some images of what milling actually looks like, and then I started to do some research into what milling actually is. So what is the overview of this process? And I've written all of that information down in blue. The next step that I looked at doing was I then decided to look at the actual process of it. So how does milling actually work? So to understand this, I watched quite a few YouTube videos as well as just doing some online research. YouTube videos are fantastic for looking at different processes because it actually shows you how they work. They explain what the advantages are, the disadvantages, and I just find it easier to actually watch a film rather than doing a lot of reading. So everything I found out about the process, I added in the green. So this is a waggle that I created, but let me show you some student waggles that have been completed for past set homeworks. So here you go. This is a polymer process, it's blow molding. This presentation has been written by hand, and again they've drawn a very accurate diagram with labels. Underneath they have the process and the overview of the blow molding. And then the next one. We have one that's been done again on PowerPoint for rotational molding, which is also a polymer process. And again, they've got an image that best represents what rotational molding actually looks like. They've got one in the top right hand corner and one in the bottom left. They've then created an overview, which is in the top left, a process, and they've looked at the advantages and disadvantages. So those are a couple of waggles as to what these presentations could look like. So how did I find out all this information? I did talk about it quite briefly just now, but here are some hints and tips to help you when you're finding out information that maybe you haven't researched before, because finding this stuff out can be difficult if you don't know what you're actually looking for, and some websites can also provide incorrect information. So how do you know what is actually right? So these are my hints and tips. Avoid using Wikipedia because this information can be changed by anybody, so it's not always written and verified by a specialist. If you are researching a brand new topic, I would say check the information you have found by looking at 2 different sources. So for example, if you are Googling lamination, for example, with polymer process, if you find one really useful website about it, that's fantastic, but it wouldn't hurt to find another website just to make sure that they have the same or similar information to make sure that it's actually accurate. Next, don't just use Google, guys. Honestly, YouTube is fantastic. There are so many educational videos on there, so please do use YouTube. It will really help you, especially when there are some animations that just make it really crystal clear as to what this topic is that you're actually researching. And then finally, technology student. So if you go into Google and just put in technology student as one word, the website will pop up. Now, this is a publicly funded site. However, it is written by a retired design technology teacher, and he knows his stuff. The website is full of information about resistant materials, metals, processes, everything, and there are diagrams, there are small animations, and even short little GIFs to help explain some of the elements. There is also a technology student YouTube link or YouTube site. It is good, don't get me wrong, it is good, and it does read out the information, but it's not as engaging as other YouTube videos. But it is good to just watch over and listen to the information once you've read through it and done a little bit of research. So those are my hints and tips for you. So this is one of my favorite tasks, and this is sketching. So your task is a sketch a day. In September, we would like you to present a sketchbook full of sketches. Now, there aren't any rules of what you need to include. It just needs to show progression in which your sketching skills over time. Have fun with it and do make it your own. You can include loads of different things. You can take images from photographs or magazines, internet clippings, and glue them into a sketchbook to create a mood board of inspiration. You can use different mixed media, so pencils, pens, markers, charcoals, board pen, whatever you fancy. They could be doodles, perspective drawing. Honestly, the list is endless. They are entirely up to you. It's all about helping you to develop your creativity and improve your sketching ability. Now, this exercise can also be great for well-being as well. Okay, so if you do just take 10 minutes a day just to sit down, quiet, do some sketching, it can help your well-being as well. So here are a couple WAGOLLs. Again, it's completely personal to you, but this is just a couple of examples as to what you could do. I've got some doodles here in the top left-hand corner, just little cartoons. I've got nice pencil drawing of a fox, which has then gone over in biro. Scenic drawings, and even some product designing. Okay, so what you're drawing, it doesn't have to actually exist. It can be your own design ideas that you've thought of over the summer holidays. It's entirely up to you. But what I would recommend is in the top right hand corner you can see that there are different rendering styles. So you've got hatching, cross hatching, using dots, gradients, tone, texture. Also practice with your rendering. Okay, I think it's a good opportunity to be able to start developing that skill now, so then when we get to September you can really hit the ground running when it comes to the designing elements. Questions. Remember, if you're watching this on the YouTube page, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to myself, Miss Anderson, or Mr. Thompson. But don't forget, we also have Teams now. So if you have any questions, you can write them down on our Teams chat, and then another student in the class, they might be able to offer you an answer. Okay, so if someone does put up a question, please don't think of the answer and then don't share it. Share it, because then it just means that that student will get the information a lot more quickly. And if you are incorrect in any way, me and Mr. Thompson will always correct it. Okay, so do ask your questions and then do share your answers. Okay, Cadcam. We're still in the booklet, guys. This is still all the work that is in the booklet. So for this task, there is an article that we're asking you to go onto and we're asking you to read, and this relates heavily to maths and science. So in DT, it requires you to demonstrate your knowledge of maths and science in both theoretical and practical ways. You will be required to use maths and science to support decisions made in the process of designing and making. So your task is as follows. Task 1. You are required to understand and apply the following mathematical skills next year, which are on the next slide. You will need to research a minimum of 3 mathematical skills that are listed, and for each one, generate an exam-style question with an answer. Next year, we can collate them and create a revision booklet of mathematical problems to solve to aid the entire group. Okay. So let's look at this table and this list. Okay, so here is our list of mathematical skills. On the table, you can see the mathematical skills are on the left-hand side in the column. And then your WAGOLLs are actually the potential questions. So let's have a look. If we read the top one, it says confident use of number and percentages. So the potential question, potential exam style question could be calculation of quantities of materials, costs and sizes. So for example, you could have an image of a sketch, a design sketch, and with all the dimensions listed, and then the exam question could be calculate the quantity of material required to create this prototype. And then you could also have the materials and their cost underneath, and the second part of the question could be, once you've worked out the quantity, now work out the cost. Okay, so that's how the potential questions could be used as a WAGOLL. So if you're reading this list and you're feeling a little bit wary, a little bit nervous, so if we do read through it, we've got confident use of number and percentages, use of ratio, calculation of surface areas and or volumes, use of trigonometry, construction use and or analysis of graphs and charts, use of coordinates and geometry, and use of statistics and probability as a measure of likelihood. Now there is supposed to be one more on this table, but I couldn't fit it on the slide, and unfortunately I can't remember what it was at the top of my head. But if you're reading this and you are really panicking because you're thinking, I'm not entirely sure what these things are, and I'm feeling really nervous because maybe I'm not that great at maths and maybe I'm a bit nervous about my ability, please do not panic. You will be taught these skills, but again, coming into September, knowing some of these will just give you that advantage and that step up. So if you're reading these and panicking and you don't really know what to start with, I'm going to show you the three mathematical skills that I suggest you start with if you're not too sure what to do. So I'm not saying this is what you should be doing. I'm just saying this is a suggestion if you're not too sure how to start. So the first thing I would start off with is confident use of number and percentages. So that's the first area I would look into if you're not sure as to where to begin. The second area I would look into is calculation of surface areas and or volumes. And then finally, the third one I would suggest you look at. If you're also wondering, where can I find this information? Where is this stuff? BBC Bite Size is a fantastic place to start with for maths revision. So again, if you're not sure, hop onto Google, BBC Bite Size, followed by perhaps percentages or ratio or trigonometry, and see what pops up. Also on Teams, I will also be uploading a resource of other websites that have different revision sources for different areas of maths. And also, I know it sounds silly, YouTube. YouTube is fantastic. Quite a few teachers go on there and actually explain and write out the processes for students to watch and hopefully learn. So I would also look into YouTube. Okay, so everything that we've looked at so far, that's all been the technical principles side of the product design A-level. Now we're looking at the designing and making principles. And again, all of this is still part of the booklet. So this is all still part of that 10 hours piece of work for you to complete. So the first task is all based around iterative design. So research and explain the iterative design process. Include a case study of a designer and product. You should evidence how the iterative process was used in the development of the product. Now, if you're reading this and you're thinking, I have no clue what that means, your first task is to research what the term iterative actually means. Okay, loads of examples on YouTube and obviously Google. But you need to include a case study. So a case study, in case you're not sure, is where you're investigating a specific person or an event, an organization, etc. And if you read the website links below, you can see the name James Dyson is in that website link. Now, the Fortune link takes you to a video. When you click on the link, it will ask you to accept the cookies. If you don't accept the cookies, you can't watch the video. So I do suggest that you click yes to the cookies, because I personally selected no and then I couldn't watch it and I had to keep going back to my cookie preferences and changing it. So it was a bit of a faff. So make sure you do accept the cookies in order to watch the video. And the video itself has Mr. Dyson talking about the iterative process, and he also explains what it means. So that is who you could use as your designer and specific product, but it could be someone else. It doesn't have to be James Dyson. We just recommend that you look at James Dyson if you're not too sure where to start. So what should this work look like? Again, it is entirely up to you. You could present this work in the form of a mind map, it could be an essay style, or it could be a PowerPoint presentation. There's no worth of marks, okay? It's not out of a certain number. It's just a way for us to see how you use different sources to investigate something and the information that you find. So how you lay it out is entirely up to you. I just suggest that you make it clear and easy to read. Okay, and I believe this is the final task of our booklet, which still relates to the design and making principles of A-level product design. So here you're going to look at the design influences presentation and complete the task in there. So attached to the work, the transition work that you were sent, there is a designer influences PowerPoint and PDF. So inside there, it's asking you to complete a task, which is to research these following design movements. So you've got arts and crafts, art deco, Bauhaus, streamlining, and then we're asking you to find one other of your own design movement using the links that are on the left hand side of the screen. And you're just going to create these little revision cards. So you're just going to find out the key features, the chief designers of that movement, and any famous products that have been created through it. Now, it would be lovely if you could add some images. However, if you don't have a printer at home, you might find that quite difficult. But if you could add at least one little sketch of a famous product, again, that's a great way for you to practice your sketching ability, but it also just helps to make your revision card really crystal clear as to what that movement looks like. So this piece of work, off the top of my head, I think it said it would take roughly 5 hours. Okay, so if you think about it, it's asking you to find 5 different art movements there, so you've almost got an hour a piece, almost, okay? But that's your design theory transition work. Okay, that was the end of the booklet, and now we're going to talk about your designing challenge, which is a very exciting challenge. So you'll be given in your transition folder a PDF, I believe, and this is the first part of it. It explains to you your challenge. Now I've adapted this ever so slightly so the task is really crystal clear and you can read it quite clearly. But let's read through the problem and the location. So Mr. Thompson has built a large patio area next to Lepcombe Brook, see figure 1, so on the left hand side, and 2, which is on the right hand side. As the main outdoor family area, it needs to be made safe for all users. The added problem is that the barrier that is manufactured needs to be temporary and easy to remove when required. So essentially, you're being asked to create some kind of fencing or barrier that can attach to the patio but then be easily removed, hopefully without damaging it. So let's see why we're doing this. The end user. Ivy Rose Thompson, born 8th of October 2019. By summer 2020, she is likely to be mobile and dictating all decisions within the household. There is an increased risk that she might end up in the river. So we're designing and making this to make sure that little Ivy is safe when she's in the patio area. And then we have some extra details, which is at the bottom of the page. The floor at the bank is made of concrete and stone, which could be drilled into, shows you in figure 3, and the walls at either end can also have attachments, and then there's a little floor plan to help you. So you've got some information, you've got some images to help you understand the area and what the problem actually looks like. So let's look at the task. The aesthetics of the barrier are not important. What is important is showing the fine detail of how the barrier might be constructed and joined to the surrounding structure/floor. The barrier cannot run in a straight line from wall to wall as shown in the plan figure 4, which unfortunately this task is actually hiding. So you've got 2 areas of this task. So 1, carry out some research into possible materials and joining methods that could be used. Think about what material properties they might need. Approximately 1 page of A4. So it's suggesting here that you have research that fits onto 1 A4 page. And where can you go to find out this information, guys? Your work, your transition work, because you looked at different materials at the very beginning. That was the first part of the booklet challenge, the booklet work, okay? So you can actually use your own research and your own work to help research for this design challenge. And then 2 is design a solution to the problem. You can show ideas or developments showing the main elements of the construction of the barrier/vents, focus on the finer detail and not the entire fence. So you're probably thinking, oh my days, what is this going to look like? How am I going to lay this out? Let me show you a student waggle from a previous Year 12 student. Here it is. So this is one of our current Year 12s who's going into Year 13, and these are just some of her design ideas for that fence, for that structure. And you can see she hasn't really focused on the aesthetics at all. She is focused primarily on the function and how it would attach to the surrounding area. And you can see that clearly just through her use of sketch and her use of rendering. So this waggle is available in the transition folder, so I won't read through all of it, but it's just a great example to show you how you could lay out this work. This is on a sheet of A3 paper. You can work on A3 paper, you can work on A4, you can have 4 sheets of A4. It is entirely up to you. But if you are working on A4 paper, I would recommend that you'd have at least 2 A4 pages of design ideas or initial design concepts, and really focus on how that barrier would attach to the area. Okay, so how could you fasten it to the sand or the concrete? Where would you drill it? Think about your use of maybe fastenings. Do you want to use screws or bolts, etc.? Okay, and all this stuff is what you need to think about and what you need to research. Again, questions. Pretty hard challenge here. It is quite a challenging design challenge for you, but that's great. It's going to really push your boundaries and maybe make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, get you out of the box. That's fine, okay? If you have no clue what you're doing, give it a go. Give it a go and just try to enjoy it. It's not meant to be a really stressful challenge. It's just meant to give you a really good opportunity to design a product for a real life problem. Okay, an existing problem for Mr. Thompson. And you never know, if you create the perfect barrier, the perfect design, he might be borrowing it and he might be hiring you to build it. So don't see it as something really stressful. See it as just a really fun design challenge and just give it a go. Okay, so we've now covered all of the transition work. Okay, so now we're going to discuss the Year 12 expectations for you for when you start in September. We're going to start with the usual school expectations, because sixth form is quite a freeing time, but you are still expected to arrive to your lessons on time and be equipped. Okay, you cannot rock up 10 minutes late because you were out getting lunch in town and then not have a pen or a pencil with you. Okay, you are expected to be on time as you would in any other year and be equipped. You will also be expected to follow the sixth form uniform guidelines. So if you're not sure what those are, don't panic. You will have all of this information before September. But if we feel that you have not met those guidelines in regards to your uniform, you will be asked to leave the class and go to the sixth form student manager, who will then help you with your uniform. And finally, homework needs to be completed on time. If you find that you are struggling with homework in September, at the beginning of Year 12, because you're probably going to be set quite a bit, do speak to your teachers. Don't suffer in silence. Let us know, because it might be quite a big jump from Year 11 to Year 12. So do ask if you need help. We are here to help you. Okay, so please don't ever forget that. Next, we're going to discuss your free time. So you will have free time on your timetable, and you can't see it, but I'm doing little air quotations when I say free time, because yes, it is free time, and you do have that time to take a little bit of a mind break, have a cup of tea, maybe have a chat to a friend, not a problem. However, you need to get into the habit of using this free time to actually complete classwork that you haven't completed during your lesson. You can also use this time to complete homework that has been set, so you're taking less work home with you to complete. But also, there's a lot that needs to be covered in design and technology, in product design A-level. So it would be hugely beneficial for yourself if during that free time you could also do your own research on the subject. So as we go through September, as you're going through your projects, you might find there is a specific smart material or modern material that you really quite find interesting. It would be great if you could do a little bit more research on that. There might be a designer you've never heard of and you want to do a little bit more research on that. It might be that you want to look a little bit more into manufacturing processes and techniques. Okay, so it's a really good thing to use that free time to just do additional research on your subject of product design. The next thing is questions. So if you have any questions or concerns about our subject, please do contact us when they arise, when you think of them. You can pop into DT anytime, or you can email us. Even if we're teaching, when we get a 5-second break, if we can, we will come over and chat with you. If we can't, we'll just politely tell you that, and then we'll suggest a more suitable time for you to come over. But if you ever do need us, please do pop over to the DT department. And then finally, the DT workshop. You do have access to the DT workshops when they are available. So when there are no classes in there, the smaller workshop, which is nearest to the computer room and to the art corridor, you have access to that workshop when it is free. So if you would like to use that workshop to complete some practical work, you are more than welcome. Or if you'd like to come and use it for your own study space, again, you are more than welcome. Now, we would probably prefer that you did product design work in that study space, but we'll leave that one down to you. But you do have that area to work in when it is available, so do feel free to use it, as well as your sixth form common area.